Hello everyone, welcome back to English Alongway, where you grow in life and grow in English. I'm Alina.
And I'm Marcus, and today we are going to make some people very uncomfortable.
Just a little.
Just a little.
Okay, picture this. You're learning English, you open your notebook, you write 50 new words, you study them, you cover them, you test yourself, you feel productive, you feel good. And then 2 weeks later, you remember maybe 7 of them.
7 is generous.
Okay, 5. You remember 5. And you wonder what went wrong. I studied, I worked hard. Why didn't it stick?
And today we are asking, was the method wrong from the beginning?
Exactly, because vocabulary lists are everywhere. Every English course, every textbook, every app. Here are your 20 words for this week. Learn them. But does that actually work? Or is it just something that feels like learning without actually being learning?
Ooh, that's a good question. Something that feels like learning without actually being learning?
I think a lot of what we call studying falls into that category.
Ooh, now I'm nervous because I used vocabulary lists for years.
I know. We'll talk about that. So here's my position. Vocabulary lists, in the traditional sense, are mostly a waste of time.
Mostly.
Mostly. Not completely, but mostly.
Okay, and I'm going to push back on that. Hard.
I expected nothing less.
Because I think you're throwing away something valuable just because people use it badly. That's not the list's fault. That's the learner's fault.
Is it, though? Or is the method itself flawed?
The method is fine. The execution is bad. There's a difference.
Okay, let me ask you something. When you learned words from a list, when you sat down and memorized them, how many of those words did you actually use in a real conversation?
Some of them.
How many?
Some of them.
Right, because here's the problem. Knowing a word and using a word are two completely different things. You can recognize a word when you see it, but can you pull it out of your brain in the middle of a conversation? Can you use it naturally? Can you put it in the right sentence at the right moment?
Okay, but you have to know the word first before you can use it. You can't use a word you've never seen.
That's true, but there's a difference between seeing a word and drilling it on a list 20 times.
Is there? Because repetition is how memory works. You see something many times, you remember it. That's basic.
Basic and incomplete, because repetition without context is just noise. You can repeat a word 100 times and still not know what it feels like, what situations it belongs to, what comes before it and after it, whether it's formal or casual, whether a real person would actually say it.
Okay, I'm listening.
A word isn't just a definition. A word is a living thing. It has a personality. It has a context. It has friends, words it likes to travel with. And a vocabulary list strips all of that away. It gives you the word alone, naked, without any of the things that make it real.
A word is a living thing. You sound like a poet right now.
I'm serious.
No, I actually like that. A word has friends. Okay, but here's my counter. What if you're a beginner? What if you know zero English? You need to start somewhere. You need a foundation, and vocabulary lists, even simple ones, give you that foundation. Cat, dog, house, water. You have to learn those words somehow.
I agree completely. For absolute beginners, basic words, basic objects, a list makes sense. But most people aren't using lists for cat and dog. They're using lists for advanced vocabulary, words like ambiguous or inevitable or perseverance. And those words you cannot learn from a list.
Why not?
Because those words only make sense in action. Perseverance is not a definition. It's a feeling. It's a story. It's someone who failed 5 times and tried a 6th time. When you feel that, when you read that story or hear it, the word sticks because it's attached to something real.
Okay, that's actually fair. I'll give you that.
I knew you would.
Don't celebrate yet. I'm not done. Here's what I think you're missing. Structure. Not everyone is comfortable just jumping into podcasts and films and conversations and hoping they pick up vocabulary naturally. Some people, and there are a lot of these people, they need a plan. They need to feel organized, and a vocabulary list gives them that. It says, these are the words you are responsible for this week. That structure is valuable. That clarity is valuable.
I hear you, but let me ask, valuable for what? For passing a test? Yes. For feeling in control? Sure. For actually becoming fluent in English? I'm not convinced.
Come on, you're separating those things too cleanly. Tests matter. Exams matter. If someone is preparing for IELTS or TOEFL or any official exam, vocabulary lists are not just helpful, they are necessary.
Okay, for exams, yes, I will fully agree. Test preparation is a different game. The rules are different. You need specific words and you need to recognize them. Fine. But we are not talking about test preparation today. We're talking about fluency, real communication, being able to speak and understand and connect with people.
But fluency and tests are connected. If you expand your vocabulary through lists, even for a test, those words become part of you eventually.
Do they, or do you cram them before the test and forget them the week after?
Some of them stick.
Some. And my question is, could more of them stick, more naturally, more permanently, if you learned them a different way?
And what is this magical different way?
Not magical, just more natural. You read something you enjoy, a story, an article, anything. You find a new word, you don't stop and make a flashcard. You keep reading. You see the word again in a different sentence, a different situation. Slowly, without force, the word becomes yours. That is how children learn their first language, and it works.
Children learn their first language over 5 years with total immersion. We don't have 5 years. We have 30 minutes on the bus.
Fair, but the principle still applies. Even in 30 minutes, what you do with those 30 minutes matters.
Okay, so you're not against vocabulary learning. You're against isolated, context-free vocabulary learning.
Yes, exactly. That is exactly what I'm saying.
Why didn't you just say that at the beginning?
Because then we wouldn't have had a debate.
Okay, fair.
Let me tell you something I noticed about myself. When I was younger, maybe 16, 17, I used to keep vocabulary notebooks. Very organized. Word on the left, definition on the right, translation below, color-coded, beautiful notebooks, honestly.
That sounds like you.
And I studied them regularly, and I could pass any vocabulary quiz you gave me. But when I tried to speak, I froze. The words were in my notebook, they were not in my mouth.
That's a very specific kind of problem.
It is, and I think it's very common, because the notebook gave me the feeling of preparation without the actual preparation. I knew the words in test conditions. I did not know them in real conditions.
Okay, that resonates with me, actually. I had a similar thing. Different context. I was learning German a few years ago. Very briefly, very badly, let's be honest. And I used an app, flashcards every day. I was getting really high scores, 90%, 95%. I thought I was doing great.
And then?
And then I visited Germany. And the first thing someone said to me in a cafe, and I'm not exaggerating, was, "What would you like?" And I stood there, completely blank, because the words I knew were apple and house and beautiful, and none of those were relevant in that moment.
You could have called the cafe beautiful.
I should have. That might have worked. But the point is, my scores were high because I was good at the game the app was playing. The app was not playing the same game as real life.
Yes, and this is the heart of it. Vocabulary lists and most flashcard apps, they teach you to play a very specific game. See the word, remember the definition. But language is not that game. Language is messy, it's fast, it's emotional, it's full of context. And if your vocabulary is only trained for the clean, calm, one-at-a-time game, you will struggle in the real version.
Okay, I'm not going to argue with that, but I want to push back on one more thing.
Of course you do.
Look, I think there are people, specific types of learners for whom vocabulary lists genuinely work. People who are very analytical, people who like systems, people who feel confident when they have a clear, measurable goal. I will learn 10 words today. There's real psychological value in that. You achieve something, you feel capable, and that feeling keeps you going. And momentum, even if it starts with something imperfect, is better than nothing.
Okay, I hear that, and I won't dismiss it because motivation is real and momentum is real. But I want to challenge one word you used, measurable. You said people like measurable goals. And yes, that's true, but is learned 10 words actually measurable? Did you learn them, or did you just see them 10 times? Because those are not the same thing.
That's a genuinely uncomfortable question.
Good.
Because if we define learned as can use naturally in conversation without thinking, then most of what vocabulary lists produce is not learning. It's familiarity.
Yes, familiarity. You recognize the word, but you don't own it.
I like that. You recognize it, but you don't own it.
There's a big difference. You can recognize hundreds of words, but your fluency, your real fluency, is built only on the words you own, the ones that come out of you without effort.
And how do you build that ownership?
By using the word, by making mistakes with it, by hearing it in 5 different situations, by accidentally using it wrong and then understanding why it was wrong, by saying it out loud and hearing how it sounds in your own voice.
So the process is messy by design.
Completely. And that's okay. Actually, that's good. Mess is how the brain learns. Struggle is how things stick. And now, 3 questions for you, right now.
Think about these honestly. Don't rush.
First question. Think about the last 10 words you studied from a list or an app. Not definitions, actual use. Could you use all 10 of them right now in a real sentence, naturally, without thinking? Count how many. Be honest with yourself.
Second question. Think about a word you know really, really well. A word that comes out of you easily and naturally. How did you learn that word? Was it from a list, or was it from a film, a conversation, a book, a moment in your life when that word suddenly made perfect sense?
And third, if you stopped using vocabulary lists completely and replaced that time with reading something you enjoy or listening to English you love, what do you think would happen to your vocabulary after 3 months? Would it grow? Would it shrink? Or would it grow in a different, deeper way?
That last question is the most important one. Sit with it.
So, where did we land?
I think we landed somewhere honest, which is vocabulary lists are not evil, but they are also not magic.
They're a tool, and like any tool, the problem is not the tool itself. It's using the wrong tool for the job.
A hammer is great for a nail, terrible for a screw.
Exactly. A vocabulary list is useful for very specific things, learning the first 100 basic words, preparing for a specific test, reviewing words you already know in context. Those are real uses, valid uses.
But for building real, deep, natural vocabulary, the kind that comes out of you automatically, the kind that makes you sound like you actually live in the language,
lists alone will not get you there, not even close.
So what does?
Reading things you love, listening to English every day, not just studying it, but living in it, watching films without subtitles and tolerating the confusion, having conversations where you don't know every word and keeping going anyway, writing, even badly, and noticing what you couldn't say and finding those words and trying again.
And making mistakes.
Especially making mistakes, because every mistake is a word that just moved one step closer to being yours.
I think the biggest shift is this. Most learners think vocabulary is something you collect, like stamps. You gather words, you store them, and at some point you have enough. But it doesn't work like that.
No, vocabulary is something you grow, slowly, organically, through experience. And the more experiences you have in English, real ones, emotional ones, confusing ones, funny ones, the more your vocabulary becomes truly yours.
And honestly, that sounds a lot more interesting than writing 50 words in a notebook.
Well, slightly more interesting, yes.
You know what I just realized? We talked for this whole episode about vocabulary, and we never once asked you to memorize a word list.
And yet, I guarantee you learned more English today than you would have from 10 flashcards.
That's either brilliant or very convenient for us.
Possibly both.
If this conversation helped you,
Keep listening. Keep growing.